Hey guys, it's Austin with Out Jeeping. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace a harmonic balancer in your Jeep 4.0. So if you don't know what a harmonic balancer is, basically it's the crank pulley in the front of your engine that turns the serpentine belt, which turns all your accessories like your alternator, power steering, and stuff like that. And the one I have in the Jeep behind me actually failed. They have a little bit of rubber between this outside pulley and the inside, and it actually failed and it was backing off of the crank, so it was about inch outwards. Now I'm going to be replacing it with the one here today, which is just the spare I have from an engine I had lying around. But these don't run too expensive. You can get them on Amazon for about 35 bucks. So I'm going to be pulling this off of the Jeep behind me in a 99 Cherokee. And to do that, we're going to have to be removing the radiator, just basically get stuff away from it, so that way we can get a puller to go right on here and have enough room to operate that. For a puller, basically you're just going to use any like standard wheel puller, and they basically have a main shaft that basically pushes out against the crank, as you have 3 other bolts that thread into these holes that are already on this pulley. That way it separates it from the crankshaft. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and show you how to take it off on a Jeep Cherokee. But it's going to be basically similar on all Jeep 4.0s. So to give you just a quick look, if you look way down there, you can see the crank pulley, and it's not lined up with the rest of the pulleys at all. And that actually caused this fan to lock up with it, and it actually blew a belt. So we had to get this thing towed home. So to start out, I'm going to be removing the electric fan and the mechanical fan shroud. This one is actually just broken on top, but the rest of it's down there. And these are all held in by 8mm bolts. You got 2 right here, 2 right here. These ones have been replaced with bigger ones, so they're not original. And then we can also remove this overflow hose out of the way, just push it over there. And from the bottom, they're clipped in, so all you got to do is just pull straight up once you get the bolts out. All right, so if you have a little clamp here next to the radiator cap for your overflow hose, you want to remove that. And then we can remove that. This is just zip tied in place. Cut that, and then it's held in over here. So I'm just going to remove that, push it out of the way. And then I can get the rest of these fan shrouds out of here. I can pull out the mechanical fan shroud, which this one is basically destroyed, from the top at least. And then we also have electrical connection for the electric fan. You want to undo that, and then you should be able to take the fan and pull it out. That broke out. Guess the clips held in better than the plastic. Alright, so with the fans removed, now is a good time to actually drain the cooling system. The most effective, fastest way to do it is to remove the lower radiator hose, which is located down here. You can either disconnect it from the radiator or the engine side. I'm just going to do the radiator since we're removing the radiator too. So yeah, make sure you have a couple catch buckets underneath and kind of like guide it towards the hole a little bit. That way you don't make as much of a mess. Alright, so if you still have your belt on, to remove that, what you're going to need to do is crack this pulley down here loose. There's going to be a 15mm bolt. You want to crack that loose about a couple turns. And then right here is the adjustment to tighten it and loosen it. So you want to tighten this up until you get enough slack to be able to take it off the pulleys. So it's pretty simple how that works. Alright, so as that's still draining, I'm going to go and take off this plate up here that's holding down the radiator. Basically, it's got a bunch of 10mm bolts. We got 2 over here, 1 going straight in. We got 2 right here that go on the radiator studs, and then we got 3 more over here. You might also have to take this latch piece off. That's just going to be a Torx. And this one's going to be a little bit tight. Your battery's located close. So I'm going to loosen up the battery strap just a little bit. And then this Torx bolt for the hood latch is going to be a T27. And then I forgot, you actually have to take all 5 of these Torx bolts off to help keep the front clip hooked into this. So basically, these should all be T27 too. Now we should be able to take this plate and lift it out of here. Alright, so next thing we got to do to remove this radiator is we got a upper radiator hose, so we got that clamp, and then we also have 2 transmission lines. Now on the lower one down there, it's going to be a quick disconnect, so you're going to need a quick disconnect line tool, you know, for what they use for fuel lines and stuff. And then up here, it's just going to be a normal hex head to get that off. So I'm going to start off with this upper radiator hose. Get free a little bit, then you should be able to take it and pull it off. So for this upper trans line, it's going to be a 3/4. Might be a little bit rusty like mine is. Should break free like that. So in case you're wondering, this is what the line disconnect tool looks like. These are one of the cheaper ones that are just plastic, but you definitely can get some nice ones that are aluminum ones that actually work a lot better than these cheaper ones. But that's all I got for today, so basically fit it on there. And then once it's on the line, you want to push it into the connection so that way all 4 prongs push out. That way you should be able to separate the line. Alright, so for struggling for about 15 minutes with that stupid quick disconnect, finally got it free. Now another thing I forgot is you got 2 little sheet head nuts that are kind of tied into the AC condenser. I already took them off, but they basically have studs right here and here, and they come off. That way you should be able to pop out the radiator. That definitely opens up a lot of room so we can really get at that pulley. Alright, so looking down here, you can see the harmonic balancer a little bit better. Now since it was already like an inch off of this pulley, I basically took a hammer and beat it from the top and bottom and basically got the ring off already. So all we got to do now is just pull this off the crank. So now down here we have a 3/4 inch bolt, and we need to take that off. Now if you have a manual transmission, you can put it in whatever gear you want to keep the engine from turning over. If you have an automatic transmission and you're not able to crack that free without it turning the engine, what you can do is actually take out one of the spark plugs, put a piece of rope inside the cylinder head, and once you turn it over, it'll actually compress the rope without putting any damage and prevent the engine from turning anymore, so that way you can get this free. Now if there was more room, obviously we can get an impact on that and we wouldn't have the problem of it turning the engine over. Alright, so I got that free. Now I can just back this off. Alright, so once you get that bolt off, there actually is a thick washer on there. It was kind of hard to see because it covers the whole entire surface. So you just got to take a screwdriver and tap it with a hammer. It should pop off if it's a little bit rusty. But now, as you can see, I got the puller on there, and I got 3 bolts going into the threaded holes that are provided already into the harmonic balancer. My bolts are really kind of crappy. I used them before to take off another harmonic balancer, and they all misshapen because they're not even grade 8 bolts, but I already been to town today, so I'm not gonna bother going there. But I seem to make this work. So now I got this all tightened up, and as you can see, what you want to do is tighten up this main bolt in the middle, and it actually runs underneath this lip right here, and you just have enough room to be able to fit on a 5/8 wrench, which is the size for the puller I have here, and then you can tighten it up that way. There's not enough room to put a ratchet on there, unfortunately, but if you have ratchet wrenches, that'll work too. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit slow process because I'm only able to do like 1/8 of a turn or 1 click on my ratchet to get this off, but yeah, you just got to keep going until we get that off all the way. You can tap the balancer a little bit just to help, you know, free it up if it gets a little bit tight. All right, so I finally got it out. It took quite a bit of time because I didn't have a lot of leverage on rotating that. I only had 1 click at a time, so it took its sweet time in getting out, but it's finally out. As you can see, this is how I had my wheel puller on. Now these bolts aren't exactly the best. They're not even grade 8, so that's why they're all bending and everything, but they're strong enough to get this out. So yeah, just make sure you get grade 8 bolts when you're doing that. I believe they're 5/16 bolts. So got that out. Now we can go and put our new one or slightly used one in, whatever you want to do. We'll be putting this used one in. Basically, I want to fit it on the shaft. Make sure the keyway is lined up with this little ridge right there. And then we can take our washer and then our bolts and then tighten it up. All right, so now we're ready to put on the new harmonic balancer, and before I put it onto the engine, I went and took a little bit of oil, just put it around the surface because this actually rides on a seal that, you know, seals it up from the crankcase, so you don't want it going in dry. Now when we put this on, we want to make sure it lines up with the keyway. Push on as far as you can with your hands, and then we're going to use the bolt and tighten it up that way. Alright, so once we get that all the way tightened up, now I'm going to take my torque wrench and torque this down to 80 foot-pounds. Alright, right there is tight enough. So now we can go and start putting things back on. So instead of putting the radiator back in right away, I'm actually going to route the belt since we got all this room right here. It just makes it a lot easier. So I went and loosened that tensioner up a little bit since my belt snapped. It was already tight at the time. So I'm going to route this around down by the alternator first, since that's the hardest place to get to. Then around the fan and up on top of the AC compressor. If you're unsure of the belt routing, they always have a sticker, usually right on that metal piece that we took off earlier, so you can take a look there. And then next, this bottom one's going to go all the way down by the crank, and then the top is going to go underneath the water pump, and then we can meet it up here by the power steering, and then we want to put this on the other side of the idler or tensioner. There we go. Now I'm going to take this bolt right here and tighten it down. It's going to be a 15 millimeter. You don't want to do anything too crazy tight on here. A little bit of deflection in the belt. I'm going to call it right there. If it squeaks at all, if you have the AC on, then simply just tighten it up a little bit more. Lastly, to lock that into place, I'm going to take the bolt on the idler, which is also a 15 millimeter, and tighten that up nice and snug. Alright, now we can go put the radiator in. Alright, so now I'm going to drop in the radiator. If your radiator happens to be bad, now is the time to do it. So I'm going to drop it in, and I'm going to make sure that these little pins line up with the holes on the bottom, and also your AC condenser has little tie-ins that have to line up too. But you should be able to see it easily when you do this. So before I stick it all the way down into the radiator support, I'm going to tie it into the AC condenser with these little, I guess, sheet metal washers. Basically go here and here, and the rods stick out from the AC condenser. You just want to line up the holes where it mounts to for the radiator. Tighten that down, and that down. Now we can proceed to line up the holes on the bottom. And if you happen to not be able to feel it, you can always go up from underneath the vehicle and see where the pins are and line them up with the holes. Alright, so that's hooked on there in the bottom. Now the next thing we're going to do is hook up the transmission lines. The bottom one, all we got to do is push it in till it clicks. Just like that, and then this one threads right on. Alright, that should be tight enough. Alright, so now I'm going to put the coolant hoses that go to the radiator. I'm just going to attach those right now. Take this clamp, squeeze it, and set it in place. And then same thing down here. Alright, so now the radiator hoses are all hooked up. Next thing we're going to do is put in the top cross piece that holds down the radiator. So set this into place. Alright. Now before I forget, I'm going to tighten up this battery bracket that I left loose before. I'm just going to take a little bit of anti-seize to put on these radiator studs, because I know they like to seize up and spin inside of the little mounts that they're made out of. So I'll just do that in case we have to take this off again. Now we got these Torx bolts that hold on the front clip. Then we got our hood latch. Alright, so I've got the mechanical fan shroud. I'll have to get a new one later, but this at least does a little bit on the bottom part, so I'm going to stick it in here. And then find where it clips in on the bottom. Then we can take our electric fan and do the same thing. Then you got the wire connection over here for the electric fan. Just plug that back into place. Then we can take this overfill hose and plug it right in. Alright, so now the last step is just to top off the coolant. You want to make sure you have a 50-50 mix of full strength antifreeze and distilled water. So after it's been a couple days, make sure you go and top off the coolant again if it went down. Because sometimes when it circulates, there's going to be air bubbles and they'll work their way out. So that's going to be it for today's video. As you can see, it was a pretty involved project. It took me about 6 hours from start to finish, and that's including filming and stuff, so maybe a little bit less if you're not doing that. So if you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe to the OutJP YouTube channel to help keep these videos coming. And if you have any questions on how I did anything, if you're having any complications, make sure to comment below and I'll be happy to answer. So that's going to do it for today. I'll see you guys in the next video.